What is going on, Bears fans? Ryan Poles' seat is way warmer than you might think. Caleb Williams gives an honest assessment of what he thinks about the Chicago Bears and what's happening right now. We've got some instant grades on the performance, and I think it's pretty honest. And it turns out that there is a report saying that Chicago Bears front office is actually turning off head coaching candidates. So, and that of course is probably due to what Ben Johnson said the other day, and people are just going along with it. So we're going to talk about all that and more. If you like this type of content, make sure you hit the like button on your way in. That helps me out so much. It's the only thing I ask of you is if you watch the content, make sure you hit the like button. So let's kick it off and let's go. First of all, final score was Chicago 13, San Francisco 38. Now look, when we got to the second half, I will say this. It did not look good to come in 24-0, but we got off to a good start. Didn't make the extra point when we were going for two, and scored a touchdown coming over here. So that 13 points, if we could do that in the first half, that's 26 points. That should be enough to win for any good defense, which we were not a good defense yesterday, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. But there was an opportunity here to at least show some pride, and the Chicago Bears just slept their way through it with the same problems that have been there continuing to be there. Now, Caleb Williams, to his credit, had a brutally honest assessment, and his assessment was this: we got our ass kicked today. There's no way around it. I think at one point they had 240-something, and we had 4 total yards. Regardless of how we feel, regardless of all of that, we got it handed to us. And listen, you might take solace in the fact that things improved a bit in the second half, but the game's already decided by that point. You're already behind the 8 ball, and you are already in trouble. So when your starters are not starting anymore, when San Francisco is putting in subs, trying to give people some playing time and stuff like that, and you seem to start scratching and clawing your way back, that doesn't make you a good team. That doesn't mean that you're having some kind of crazy comeback. But Caleb Williams ended up the afternoon with 134 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, sacked 7 times, 17 of 23 on passes without throwing an interception. But there were plays that he missed on where, really throwing the ball away instead of taking the sack would have been so much better for this team. There was a lot to unpack and a lot going on. So we are not there yet. We can see the talent in Caleb Williams, but the play calling is still suspect. Now, let's talk about Ryan Poles for a second, because Ryan Poles' seat is reportedly a lot warmer than the Bears are letting on. A source informed SM that the vibe inside Hallis Hall is tense. There is a feeling that more is riding on next week's game in Minnesota than many are letting on. Remember, Warren spent over a decade with that organization and helped build their stadium. Getting humiliated on primetime TV against a former team may compel the team president to reevaluate the decision to keep Ryan Poles. Don't forget that he wasn't around when the GM was hired. While they may have a solid working relationship, there is no reason to maintain it if the team is trending in the wrong direction. Nothing is set in stone. Ryan Poles won't be fired because of the loss in San Francisco. It comes down to how the team finishes out the string. If they're crushed multiple times over the final month, it will be an indictment on the roster he put together. In such an event, Warren will consider wiping the slate clean with a new GM and a new head coach. It may not be what the McCaskies wanted, but the reality is their hand-picked guy hasn't gotten the job done. Now, if you remember, we were informed that Ryan Poles, this was an arranged marriage between Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, because the McCaskies wanted both of them. So they wanted Ryan Poles, they wanted Matt Eberflus to work together. They look horrible. They obviously and clearly do not have a great synergy that worked together. So Matt Eberflus on his way out. Ryan Poles, of course, we saw the video with the interview with Kevin Warren where Ryan Poles sat there not happy. We could tell that he was unhappy with what was going on, and it should stand to reason that maybe we see something change here in the next little while, because once elevating Thomas Brown, guess what? The Bears look even worse than they did before. Turns out that the glue that held that defense together was Matt Eberflus, because this team gave up. Tyreek Stevenson looks like he's completely out of his depth right now. We don't have a whole lot going on. And look, the return of Jaquan Brisker, not really going to fix a lot of it. So There's some real questions here that the Chicago Bears are going to have to answer for a season that held a lot of promise. It suddenly fell apart very, very quick. Now, there is a report out here that says that the Bears are scaring off coaching candidates. NFL coaches are worried about the Chicago Bears ownership. The McCaskey family is a problem. Now, there is some reports coming around that, perhaps Jeff Bezos will be the new owner of the Bears or something like that, that the McCaskey family dynamic is really... In 2018, I want to say that it turns out that most of the McCaskey family actually wanted to sell. Virginia and George did not. Now, this is a mess that Chairman George McCaskey has made for himself. He calls himself a non-football guy who would rather ump Little League Baseball than attend Chicago's draft room. Look, this ended up poorly. And Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, none of this has worked out. So the choices that they've made so far have been very, very bad. Hopefully, we'll start to see some kind of the winds of change. The winds of change are going to change the dynamic of the Chicago Bears. We are just not there yet, but we will see a lot of stuff. And by the way, event that the Bears are going to keep what they have and the McCaskies are going to continue on, and that there is no truth to this Jeff Bezos rumor, there is, but it's not for right now, then what you could look at is you could look at the Chicago Bears under the McCaskies firing everybody again, bringing in a new GM, bringing in a new head coach, doing the same thing, it not working again, and then, or even if it is working, Jeff Bezos comes in and wants his own people, or a new owner comes in and wants their own people here. So you could be looking at the absolute wasting of Caleb Williams. And I want everybody to be prepared for that. Be real possibility at that point that will happen. Now, for the grades, let's look at this. First of all, on offense, Caleb Williams gets a B-. And look, Williams had one mistake. He fumbled the ball towards the end of the game on a pump fake. It was his first turnover in 252 touches. His touchdown passes to Roma Dunze were great throws, and he looked good, not great, but he looked in command when he needed to be. The fact that he didn't look good in the beginning is a problem. However, DeAndre Swift had another down day. He had 38 carries, 38 yards on 14 carries. Hasn't been very effective. Some of the blame should be placed on Thomas Brown, whose run-pass balance in the first half wasn't good at all. By the way, when you watched it, very predictable. And you don't like what you saw. Like this was not the way that you intended it to go. And look, even if you say, well, depth is an issue, and you say, well, running back room was kind of injured, and you were down to Travis Homer and DeAndre Swift was injured. That is true, but also we traded away Khalil Herbert for that. We put a lot of faith into DeAndre Swift to run between the tackles, and he's not a guy that runs between the tackles. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, in my opinion here. And by the way, I like DeAndre Swift. If we were good at setting the edges and running around the edges, then I would say DeAndre Swift a great, but that's not really that's not really the identity, or hadn't been the identity of the Chicago Bears. It was tough, hard-nosed football running between the tackles, and we're just not doing that. So DJ Moore got a C+. He caught 6 passes on 7 targets. Roma Dunze got a B because, of course, he had 2 touchdowns and caught 4 of his 5 targets. Keenan Allen had 3 catches. However, it was also one of those things where he dropped a couple of easy passes. And Cole Kmet, I don't know what's going on with Cole Kmet. The only throw that he got, he dropped, and I don't know why he's not a bigger part of this. Like, I don't understand some of what's going on. And the offensive line, they allowed 7 sacks today. Now, look, I'm going to say this, and I know some people may not agree with me on this, but I believe it was 4 times Caleb Williams was sacked on 3rd and long. Caleb Williams clearly just trying to hold on to the ball and doing too much, and not just throwing the ball away and giving us just better field position to kick the ball, relying too much on Torrey Taylor's gigantic leg to make something happen. But also, Caleb Williams evaded a lot of sacks. So, I feel for a lot of what was going on here. I don't know why. We had a good protection scheme for a couple of games, even in losses where we were simplifying it. And all of a sudden, it got real complicated this week, and it did not look nearly as robust as it had the weeks before. And maybe that was just the San Francisco team really getting on it because, they felt bad about having 3 losses in a row, and their pride was on the line, and their pride mattered more than the Bears' pride. Defensive line could not get any kind of pressure. Every time I felt like there was just going to be a little bit of pressure, and every time I saw a good play, it was that trajectory thing where they were just too far away, and Brock Purdy, to his credit, made some really good plays. This unit generated very little pressure on opposing quarterbacks and just isn't as good as we thought it was. They played well early in the season, but as the injuries have mounted, they've turned into a pumpkin. Now, biggest part here, Andrew Billings being out. That's your run stopper, right? And he hasn't been a great run stopper. And Gervon Dexter was not a great run stopper at the beginning of the season. Gervon having a good season, not great season. TJ Edwards having a good, not great season. Tremaine Edmonds, I just don't think he's having a fantastic season. Linebackers overall got a D grade today. There were way too many situations in which Jack Sanborn was just outplayed. TJ had a very nice day, but Tremaine Edmonds, you saw his coverage was horrible on George Kittle. You saw that Jack Sanborn's coverage was horrible, and they couldn't keep the third-string running back Isaac Guerrero from the University of Louisville, I might add, shout out to the Cards, but couldn't come close to doing anything against these two guys, which is absolutely crazy. Your third string guy you can't do anything with, and George Kittle is just having monster catch after monster catch. Secondary, Tyreek Stevenson is looking like an absolute bust at this point. Defensive play caller Eric Washington just not getting it done. Cairo Santos, who knows? Torrey Taylor, great. 54, it's averaged 53 yards per kick. Thomas Brown just doesn't understand. Thomas Brown has been undeniably better than Shane Waldron, but he's done nothing to solve the first half woes. This team came out flat and lifeless in a game where everyone had something to prove against a 49ers team that was banged up, missing stars on both sides of the ball, and vulnerable. But Kyle Shanahan put on a masterclass on the opposite sideline, throwing cold water on the idea that Thomas Brown may be ready for a full-time job. And then Eric Washington, his first time as a play caller, and look, this was awful. This was an awful game plan, and he was just exposed, right? So, here's what we know. So far, Matt Eberflus is a better play caller than Eric Washington on the defense. Thomas Brown, as a head coach, did not get this team hyped up. And look, these are grown-ass men that should be playing a grown-ass men game. They should be violent. They should be hardcore. They should be playing like every play matters. And guess what? Chicago Bears decided to take quite a few plays off. That is not a great sign for the level of leadership from Thomas Brown. I'm pretty sure that he's going to be embarrassed by it. And look, I'm not going to dismiss the fact that, you got to have Ryan Bates. You got to have Roschon Johnson. You got to have pieces in place for your rotation when you have everybody look like a better team. But at the end of this, that doesn't even matter because, guys, this team looked like a disaster, and it got exposed more than it ever had before against a team, by the way, that I predicted we were going to lose to at the beginning of the season. But then this team really wasn't that good. Coming in at 5-7, they looked like they just needed some direction. But let's not forget, this was a Super Bowl team last year. I predicted this would be a loss, but none of the 6 other losses in a row here did I think we were going to lose. I thought that we would win those games. And, playing close, that's not winning. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. I know I got a little bit wordy on this. I know I got a bit long, but, guys, I'm a little depressed and just absolutely annoyed by the fact that the Chicago Bears, when given an opportunity to show themselves out and prove that this head coach belongs in the NFL, threw up one of the worst games of the season and look like they have no idea what they're doing, and that they quit even on their new coach. So let me know what you think in the comments down below, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon.